So I realized that my understanding of human potential was wrong, was basically massively limited. So I then started to want to find out what have I been missing out. For me, that's the key reason to do it. If you're not getting more self-knowledge than the thing you're doing, arguably you're wasting your time. They become so wound up, their identity becomes so much part of doing that thing and winning, that when they no longer have the ability to do that thing and win, so they get injured or they get too old or whatever, that it's a massive gap in their life, and suddenly they're not getting affirmation in that way, and they realize that their self-actualization is dependent upon being good at that thing.
Welcome guys, welcome back to Personal Transformation TV, more specifically, the Athletic Sports Show. Now today we have a very special guest. His name is Dan Edwards. Now for you guys who don't know who Dan Edwards is, he is basically what you call a mover. A mover is somebody who, as the name says, has the ability to move in any situation, in any obstacle, in any circumstance. And Dan has been a mover all his life. He started martial arts when he was at just the tender age of 10. This is during the 1980s, guys. This is when martial arts was just exploding in the UK due to the Bruce Lee, the Jackie Chan, the Steven Seagal, the famous iconic superstars that shows what martial arts really is here in the UK. He then transitioned to parkour during the early 2000s, actually training with the first and second generation parkour practitioners, even the originators, the creators of parkour themselves. And he is here today, guys, to share with us his story and to give value to every single one of us. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, man.
So Dan, just for the benefit of our audience right here, can you just tell us why martial arts?
Why martial arts? That's a huge question. I know I was so young when I started that you know it's been part of my life literally as long as I can remember being alive, kind of thing. So it's just sort of there. But if I sort of thought about why we started back then, why me and my friends got into it and were dragged into it, it's kind of the stuff you said. You know, it's nothing more profound back then than Bruce Lee movies, Jackie Chan movies, action movies. And we wanted to be action heroes. We wanted to be able to do those things and have those capacities and build that. You know, we wouldn't think of it in these terms, but they were role models in terms of confidence and competence and what they could do. Yeah, so they could look after themselves, they could look after other people, and we were raised on those tales of heroes and competent individuals. So there's nothing more profound to it than that at the start when we were like 8, 9 years old. And then over time, you know, as we trained more seriously and began to understand the philosophies and the concepts involved in the fighting arts, then it became a deeper thing, and we began to realize the transformative practice of it, and the fact that it's a tool by which you can sort of shape yourself and, you know, find your potential. So, but we came to that later. You know, at the beginning it was nothing more profound than wanting to be Bruce Lee, probably.
So the whole aspect of it was to, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, sort of to imitate what you've seen as the Bruce Lee done it, the Jackie Chans, the Steven Seagals, is to imitate that. And was that the sort of biggest factor that got you into martial arts?
Yeah, I think I mean, they were kind of the role models we were given as kids, you know, with action heroes and those sort of stories. And I think if you look deeper into that, it's the reason that kids, and especially young boys, I suppose, back then, wanted to go down, saw them as role models, was that they provide all the capacities that you're taught are important, like resilience, like self-reliance, like competence, like the ability to keep yourself and other people safe, you know, the ability to solve problems, strength, you know, psychological and physical strength. These capacities that they kind of encapsulate, they're just archetypes, right? The action heroes, and those sort of things you want to emulate. You know, we wanted to emulate, wanted to be like that, be that resourceful, be that capable. So. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think there's anything, you know, I think it's fairly crude maybe, but I think it's a good thing. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's very natural. That's why storytelling and the storytelling narratives around the world and the hero's journey, which underpins all story, the monomyth, that's why that is a universal thing across all cultures and all types of all periods of history, because those stories are used to create archetypes for young people within that culture to aspire to help them grow up to be, you know, useful parts of society, I suppose. So the hero's journey is something we all experience in our own lives, and that's why we respond to those stories.
The hero's journey, I love that. I think this goes to show that truly everyone wants to be a hero in their own sort of form or shape. And if you don't mind me asking, Dan, what did you do to start training for martial arts at a young age? Did you have a coach? Did you train by yourself?
It began as very, very raw, you know, sort of fighting skills. Initially we didn't have any teachers. We were too young to have access to them. There were martial arts schools were pretty rare. So we would begin by emulating the movements we saw in movies and basically practicing them on each other at school. So we would fight in playgrounds, in the classrooms, and we would just, you know, it was kind of like a mini fight club. It was like you're 9 or 10 years old, and it's like, okay, today you're going to fight him, and just to see what the outcomes go, and then tomorrow it'll be you guys, and the day after that will be you guys, and then in small groups we'd fight each other and whatever, you know, kind of kid gang rivalry and whatever it's in the schools.
Wow.
But it was mainly. It wasn't necessarily done with like it wasn't like, you know, bullying or a desire to be aggressive. It was just literally maybe it was strange, but it was quite we were just interested in like working out what worked. You know, who can be who, what techniques work, what's actually practically applicable. And in some ways, I think that's a good way to start, because we weren't taught. We didn't have someone giving us the ideas of like, these are the parameters that you need to train with it from the start. So we just fought. We found out what worked, and it was a really efficient way to learn. Then we went into formalized teaching. My first formal teaching was when I was about 12 in Waroryu Karate. With a great teacher, a guy called Gary Swift, who studied in many arts and was a knockdown fighting champion as well. So he was a great teacher, and he took us on and started teaching us. But we'd had like 2 or 3 years of our own kind of experimentation with combat before that, as much as kids can do at the age of 9 and 10. But that served really, really well. And the reason I know it kind of worked in some ways was I started training in karate with Sensei Swift, and he within 3 weeks of training, he could kind of see the 2 or 3 of us that had joined his club from our background. He could kind of see that we were okay with combat fighting. So he basically said, right, I want you guys to go into this tournament, into this, I think it was the all schools, the England all schools karate tournament. He said, I want you guys to go into that. We'd only been training 3 weeks. And he said, and you had to have a belt to go into it. We were white belts, obviously we haven't done any gradings, but you had to be at least a red belt to go. Okay. So he basically like gave us a red belt, just gave us the belt, said, okay, just so you can get into the tournament, just put us into the tournament, and we were going up against these black belts or whatever we've been training for years, and won the tournament. So, and I remember winning that tournament and then thinking, that was really easy. These guys didn't know how to fight, but of course they didn't, because in some ways they hadn't been taught in that kind of live environment. So, that was quite an interesting experience at a very young age, I think. But yeah, our training originally was really just raw, practical. What works? Does this work? Copying moves from the movies, and just trying to apply stuff.
So let me get this. You're telling me that your sensei gave you a red belt to enter the competition for you to beat up a black belt, which you guys did.
Well, yeah. I mean, I get the last 4 or 5 rounds of the competition where again only brown belts and black belts have made it that far. And I remember they were really displeased when I won the tournament, because they were like, "It's this punk kid red belt who's won." So, and they were not happy. I remember them leaving the tournament. We were waiting to be picked up. I was like 13 at the time, waiting to be picked up by my mum, and they were like black belts walking past, looking really pissed off, you know. So, but I remember kind of thinking, I just turned up and did what I was told. You know, I didn't want to win, and it was just mainly it's just to do with timing and rhythm. In that they fought in a very, because I guess they'd been trained only in the karate, so they'd been taught in a certain rhythm, and they were taught only to respond to certain movements that the other people had been taught. So it was all very, very training in a bubble.
Okay.
Our training had not been like that. Our training had just been fight anyone and do what works. So it was very easy for me to adapt to what they were doing and find ways to solve what they were doing, but they couldn't really adapt to me very well. So, and that carries on to movement as well, in that the more adaptive movers are the ones who are more resilient and the ones who are more capable in more situations. So the more adaptation you have in your movement, the more variability you have in your movement, the healthier, stronger, fitter and more capable you will be, which is now what we teach in parkour.
Right. So what you just said, do you think that applies to every athlete in their current sport?
I think it applies probably to everything in life. It's kind of in biology it's known as the law of requisite variety, which is basically that, as far as I understand it, that the more variety there is in any kind of pool of organisms, the stronger and healthier it will be. So variety and variability is the key to health in any paradigm. And I think in movement, yes, it is. And I think in any athletic endeavour, depending on what you want to do, if you want to win a specialised competitive sport, then you will have to become very good at that specialisation, which is totally understandable. But the practice of variable movements around your specialisation will definitely help to make you more resilient, more coordinated, you'll have more physical intelligence, which will be less likely to be injured, and will improve your overall game. So we train a lot of very high level athletes in different sports who come because they're aware of the limitations of the specialisation of their training. So for example in football their training is very specialised, in rugby their training is very specialised, and they come to us to fill in the gaps, to learn more movement skills that can fill in the gaps of their own training, because they realise that their specialisations promote injuries and limit capability.
It's really interesting. Well, you've touched on a topic that I actually want to discuss. Having said that, let's slightly delve into more of your background, and what were, if you don't mind sharing, the sort of competitions then after that you entered, or if you could just share the achievements in terms of competition-wise that you achieved for yourself.
So in competition, like I said, I fought in that tournament, won that, and I think I won it. I went back and defended the title the second year, and won it that year as well. And then after that, at a pretty young age, but after that I realised that I had no real interest in sport, in the sport version of martial arts.
Okay.
So I had no real interest in tournaments and competition in that way. And also I was beginning to understand the philosophy of the fighting arts and where they came from and the history. And I was beginning to understand that the sport version was a new thing in martial arts.
Really?
And it wasn't really the origin. So I also sort of empirically understood that, having done those two tournaments, that these guys are kind of sport martial artists, and I think they're not very capable. So, and I beat them, and I wasn't a sport martial artist. So I wasn't there for it. After that, I was like, that's not the real thing. That's not where the real training is for me. That's not what I'm interested in. So after that, I solely trained in the fighting arts for purpose, for functionality.
Functionality.
So to train to, what works, what is applicable in a self-protection or combat situation. That was all I was interested in from then on, pretty much.
Amazing. And so you then progressed into doing something else after you decide, the sport in martial arts isn't really, sort of the competitive side isn't really what I'm after. What made you then decide to search, doing parkour, as you said you do parkour. What made you decide to go into parkour?
After I'd stopped the sporting element when I was a kid, I obviously continued training in the fighting arts and the combative arts for many years, about 30 years now total, I suppose, and trained in many traditional systems: karate, aikido, kung fu, wing chun, muay thai, jiu-jitsu, tai chi.
How do you memorize all that?
Just years of immersion. I was fanatical about stuff, so it was all I did. So I trained all that stuff, and then started going to more modern concepts of combatives and these kind of schools of thought, really. They're not styles, but sort of just systems of training drills to make you a more effective fighter. Studied then, went to Japan and started training in the Shinto-ryu, which is a Japanese battlefield system, very old Japanese martial art. And that was kind of, for me, the pinnacle in some ways of the traditional arts that I could reach aiming for.
Can you explain why was it the pinnacle, if you don't mind sharing?
So the Shinto-ryu, when I grew up, the Shinto-ryu was kind of this. There's only one school in the world where you can learn it, and it was kind of known as this. And it's the first Japanese martial art. It's the oldest Japanese martial art, and all the other sword systems and that came from it. So it's the art that the bushi class, the samurai of ancient Japan would study, right? So that when I was growing up, that was kind of this mythical school. There was a BBC documentary on it in 1980, I think, called Way of the Warrior, and it was sort of this mythical school in Japan. It was like, whoa! When I grew up watching that documentary, and then when I was older as an adult, after I left university, I was like, I'm going to go and live in Japan and train at that school. So I went.
Actually did that?
Yeah, that's why.
Wow.
So I lived there 5 years and trained in that school, and that for me was kind of this, like, since I've been a kid, it was kind of like the pinnacle of the, you know, one of the, like, the most mythical elite martial arts of the Japanese traditional arts, and it was, you know, an awesome experience. So I trained a lot in those arts, always keeping it practical, never competing. I mean, there's Shinto-ri, there's no grades and there's no competition. It's just learning how to use a sword and various weapons to kill an enemy, pretty much. So those things were, you know, really important part of my life, and I got very used to that sphere of living and training, and almost, I suppose, a comfort zone in that I've been doing so long. And then when I found parkour, when I first saw parkour and the practice of it, I was immediately, you know, captivated, blown away by how physically capable and psychologically capable these guys were. And the young guys in France, the French practitioners that I saw first, I was kind of like, that is, you know, I mean, we grew up with stories, superheroes and action hero movies and other. And then to actually see humans do that stuff in real life, you know, jumping from building to building, and climbing stuff, and these crazy acts of precision and strength, and, you know, to see that and realize that humans can do that, you know, and it's not a movie, and it's not an effect. That was weird. And so I wanted to try that, and I started, you know, trying it, and realized how hard it was. I was like, wow, this is a whole nother level of training, because I already thought I was quite strong. I thought I had good balance, you know, from martial arts and provided quite. But then when I tried parkour, I was like a child compared to these guys. I was like, I couldn't keep up with them. I couldn't do the basic exercises they did before they trained. I couldn't even do that. So I was like, wow. You know, I can't even. We have a saying part where you have to train before you can train parkour kind of thing. You know, there's certain things you have to, basic strengths you have to build to be able to perform the moves of parkour, right? So in some ways, so you know, I can, for them, these guys were like cranking out muscle ups, you know, on the bar, like boom, just 10, 20, 30 muscle ups in a row. And for me, I'd never even seen a muscle, let alone, there's no way I could, you know, I was like, huh? And they were like, that was their pull up, that was the equivalent of their pull up. They were like, yeah, this is just basic training. I was like, okay, you guys are different. So, you know, and I thought my balance was good, but then there'd be 30 feet in the air balancing along a metal railing, you know, and I was like, okay, that's a different level of balance. You know? So I realized that my understanding of human potential was wrong, was basically massively limited. So I then started to want to find out what have I been missing out? What element is there missing from my training? And I started training it and began to realize, okay, the body and the mind can do way more than I thought, and started to push hard and train hard, and then that became a big part of my training. I still trained the fighting arts, but that became a massive part of my training, and started taking more and more and more time, and so challenging, as you now are finding out. You know, it's really challenging, it's really demanding, but the results are, it just makes you more capable than you could imagine. So I was hooked pretty much from day one. Yeah.
So how did you reach out to them and say, oh, I'd like to train with you? Can I train with you? Can I be a mentee? How did the process?
Well, back then there was no way to reach out to those guys. There was no YouTube. There was, you know, so it was just like you'd see the odd streaming video or the movie Yamakasi in 2000 that featured the founding guys. You know, so you see that kind of stuff and think, wow, and then you just try and imitate it and talk to it. There was some forums where people would communicate, but it was very, very limited. There was no teaching. There was no, you know, these guys were kind of mythical guys in the suburbs of Paris. So initially, and I was living in Japan, so initially the training was just me and two friends going out and trying to find our way. Very similar to when I started martial arts, was just trying to find our own way and trying to find out what works, which was quite good. It was very haphazard. We probably made loads of mistakes. It was very inefficient, but it kind of, you know, we started to get somewhere. We started to find solutions to the questions we were asking, and then over time, over those couple of years, I got in touch with the fledgling UK community, of which there are a few practitioners here, and through that communication, we started to communicate with the French practitioners. And that was how I first got sort of introduced to those generations of practitioners. The second generation first, with a couple of the French guys that came to the UK, and I started training a lot with one or two of them, who ended up getting, you know, together. We ended up forming Parkour Generations. So those guys were my access to get to the founders. So I then started training with those guys as well. So, but it was back then there was no formal route to reach out to those guys. Those guys didn't live online. No one had email accounts. No one had social media. No one, you know, it was very hard to communicate back then. So with those sort of people. So, and they're not really in that space. They're very kind of wild individuals back then. So still are. So it was a very different way of, you know, it was very inaccessible. You could only train in parkour if you were passionate enough and diligent enough and kind of crazy enough to seek those people out and keep up with them. Because there was no teaching either. It wasn't like he's a classman and teaching. It was like, okay, we're going training. If you can keep up with us, all good. If you can't, go home. It was brutal.
Wow.
There was no classes, no structure, no guidance. It was literally, if you can keep up, then you might learn something. If you can't, not a problem. It's fine because it wasn't. They didn't set themselves up as teachers in that way, so they weren't interested in that. So, and I was one of the few that was just devoted enough, I guess, to stay with it and learn it, and then and carry it on.
Amazing. So is this sort of devotion to parkour that you have now? Is that something that you sort of carried from your martial arts background, or is this something that because you're so passionate about parkour that you just wanted to do it?
I think from my martial art background, I'd obviously acquired a discipline and an approach to training and an understanding of the discipline required in order to reach your potential. So I'd acquired that from martial art, and then when I came to parkour, I just had that same thing, and I applied that thing to parkour, which was that this is going to be a long, hard road to become good at this thing. And I'm going to need to study. I'm going to need to train. I'm going to have to put discipline in. I'm going to have to find people that know what they're doing. I understood that in parts because I'd done that in martial arts. So I then just applied that to parkour. And parkour was just more, for me, it was more fun. It was more engaging. It's more all round. It gets you experiencing the world, and in some ways, it was more honest. So the way I think about it is, parkour is kind of like a mirror, right? Every day you go out and you train parkour, you go out and it's basically like a mirror. It reflects back to you that day who you are. And it's very ruthless. There's no faking it in parkour. You can't wear a belt and claim you're very good at it. Either you can do the jumps and you can't, either you can do these moves, you can't, either you're in shape enough to train or not, whatever. So the mirror won't judge you, but it will just tell you this is who you are. Today you're sick, today you're lacking motivation, today you're injured, today you're not skilled enough to do this move. It will just tell you who you are. And it's up to you then. Do you respond to that knowledge to get better, or do you walk away? There's no judgment, there's no reward at the end. And that ruthlessness, that rawness, I really like that honesty. Whereas for me in the martial art, what I've trained a lot, I've gone through the different disciplines and schools, and I've seen a lot of people, a lot of teachers and whatever, who were not faking it, but they're wearing flash belts saying they're 6th, 7th dan or whatever, but they're unfit, they're out of shape, and you knew they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag, But no one could ever test it, because how do you test someone's fighting ability unless you actually fight?
Yes.
Right? You can't. So you can kind of fake it, and I didn't really like that. There was a lot of talk, and you kind of knew that actually most of it's just bullshit. You guys are doing bullshit. So whereas in parkour, when I came to it, there's no faking it. Straight away, everyone training out, everyone you meet training is like, they can either do the moves or they can't. They can either do the jumps or they can't. And it's psychologically it asks a lot of you there and then, physically and psychologically, as you know. So the self-knowledge you gain from martial arts is from parkour is intense and immediate, and you can't train it without acquiring that. Whereas in things like martial arts, you can kind of go through on the cruise control and still pretend to yourself that you are some badass fighter or getting good or whatever. Okay. And that honesty in parkour, that ruthlessness, I really like.
So I think you sort of highlighted, thank you for sharing that by the way, I think you've highlighted certain challenges that you saw in martial arts and now see this as a potential in parkour to improve on, because you can't fake it, right? As you said. Are there any more challenges, let's say if we backtrack to your martial arts career that you found? Any sort of challenges?
Any challenges when I was growing up in the martial arts? Yeah. Oh yeah, loads. I mean, there's a lot of, I think one of the big things in martial arts that I learned quite early on was the battle with your own ego. It's quite easy to become egotistical and to start, looking down on people and thinking, I train martial arts and you don't. And they have this kind of ego about training and ego about beating people in training, even if it's not competitive, even just in training, imposing yourself on someone else and like beating them, and then or feeling bad when you get beaten, your ego being bruised. And that fight against your ego is a very tough challenge, and so that's a really good challenge to engage with. But that's one of the early challenges. I realised that I saw quite early on in myself that like right from when I won that first competition, I wasn't really interested in competitions, but I remember when I won it, I kind of felt an egotistical, like, part of me was felt kind of like proud that this towards that's just rubbish. So I was like, what's that about? So I had to sort of fight that ego element, and that's another one of the reasons I didn't want to compete, was because I realised that it's hard to compete in those situations without becoming egotistical. And I didn't want to. So yeah, I think that's one of the main challenges is fighting your own ego, being aware of that, and maintaining humility, real humility throughout. That was a big challenge psychologically. But that self-knowledge is the goal. That's the most precious thing you can get out of training something like that. So.
Absolutely. I think for athletes in general, such as myself, like I completely agree with you, because early on in my career, when I started winning competitions, finally, I started to feel that I was on top of the world, as well as they can't touch me. I'm always quicker than them, and this sort of developed a sort of ego that every time I approach a competition, I always see everyone else as less than me, that I'm always better, and that kind of bit me in the ass after I retired and had my identity crisis,
which every athlete goes through sooner or later.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind sharing that, why do you think every athlete goes through an identity crisis somewhere, shape or form in their career? Because you seem to...
Yeah, I mean, I think the performance athletes anyway, let's say the elite performance athletes, which is what you definitely were, right? So, and still are, but now you're just not competing, elite athlete. But yes, the most of the sports that we've seen at high level performance athletes, they become so wound up, their identity becomes so much part of doing that thing and winning, that when they no longer have the ability to do that thing and win, so they get injured or they get too old or whatever, that it's a massive gap in their life, and suddenly they're not getting affirmation in that way, and they realise that their self-actualisation was dependent upon being good at that thing. So now they're no longer what they consider to be good at it, because they can't win the medal, even though they're still awesome at it. They're not getting the affirmation from other people. So now they feel they're bruised. They feel their ego bruised. They feel low self-esteem. They feel frustration, despair. A lot of them can get very depressed. It's a real thing. And that's quite common. And the higher level you go, the more elite performer you are, the bigger the fall in a way. So, and that's potentially an argument against competition in a way, and about the fact that maybe when we, as a species, when we evolve, we will put that sort of stuff behind us and realise that having to beat people in order to say you're the best, or is pretty primitive.
Absolutely.
So maybe we'll outgrow. It's not that competitive sports aren't great fun. They are. I love watching loads of competitive sports, but you've got to be able to. Ideally, you've got to be able to compete without being emotionally attached to the outcome. You should be playing the sport for the love of playing the sport. It's the old cliche, but you should be doing it for intrinsic motivation, intrinsic purpose reasons, not extrinsic, not as in I must do this because I want a medal. If you're doing that, you're going to be very unhappy when you can't win that medal.
And I think you touched on something that I think our audience would really love to hear. If there are, let's say, any advice or suggestions that you could give our audience, more specifically the athletes starting out or retiring, what can you say to them to prevent having an identity crisis?
I would say look at why you're doing what you're doing. That's the most important thing. Is the famous book Start With Why or whatever. Is right. Look at why. Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to be in this competition? Why do I love this sport? Why am I doing it? Really drill down into that, because that will give you an understanding of whether you're going to go down a positive or a negative path. Because if you go down to that why and it's selfish, egotistical, self-interested why, then that's going to lead you to a bad place no matter what happens. But if the why is good, if the why is, well, I do this because I love doing it, I love sharing it, I love the community around it, I love the practice of the sport, I just love everything about it, and that's why I want to get my ability to be as high as I can, reach my potential, and sort of test myself against other people that are also highly skilled, so that I can keep improving my level in this kind of coactive flow thing. Then that's good. The fact you can be in is kind of irrelevant. What matters is why are you there. If you're there for a healthy reason, positive internal reason, then all good. Competition is going to be good for you. If you're there for a negative reason, then it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's going to be bad for you. So either way, the winning and losing is not going to be so important. What's going to be important is your reason for being there, and that's why. So ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing it?
Absolutely. One of the final questions I really wanted to ask about is, for all the years of you training as a martial artist and a parkour practitioner, what would be the most biggest life lessons you took from your journey as an athlete so far that has helped you in the different aspects of your life?
So many things I've learned through those practices that have carried over into everything else. Picking one is quite hard, but I think
you can pick top three. Generous. Okay.
I think so. What things have I learned from those practices that I've taken over into my life? I think the most important thing probably that I've learned from martial arts and from parkour is that everything comes down to self-knowledge. I think those things teach you, good practices, good disciplines, teach you who you are. They teach you your potential physically and mentally. They teach you where you're at now. They show you what your potential could be, but they also show you where you are now, and the mistakes you might have made getting to this place, and the good things you've done getting to this place. And they give you a method by which you can improve. But basically, this is all just self-knowledge, and they're the practice of self-knowledge. Those things. So yes, it's taught me elements of humility and discipline and willpower and resilience, but all these things. But for me, all those things are just self-knowledge. So I think a good transformative practice, whatever you train, if you want to call your thing a transformative practice, it's got to be something by which you gain improved self-knowledge. As a result of practice. And for me, that's the key reason to do it. If you're not getting more self-knowledge than the thing you're doing, arguably you're wasting your time, I think. So you only have limited time on this earth, and surely the purpose is to understand yourself as best you can, so that you can then relate honestly to other people in the world around you. And that starts with understanding who you are. So self-knowledge is vital.
Self-knowledge, okay. And is there any final, let's say, messages that you could share into our audience of athletes listening into this, as maybe they're just starting out, maybe they want to start martial arts as well, but don't know how to start, maybe the sort of philosophy of why they should start in the first place?
So why they should start, or what they should start with?
Both,
okay. I think first thing again is the first thing I get asked the question a lot, what martial art should I take up? A lot of people say, hey man, what martial art should I start? Because I've done a lot. My first question to them is, the first thing you must do is understand why you want to take up martial arts. What are you looking to get out of it? What's your purpose in training? Once you've got that, then I'll be able to tell you which martial art you should study. Because or which route you should go down, what you should focus on. So the first question is, why do you want to do it? What's the reason? Is it that you want to be able to beat someone up, or is it that you want to get more balance in your life, healthier and fitter, social reasons? What are you looking for? And then you'll be able to work out, then you'll be able to know which path is going to get you there, and if you don't know what you're looking for, then it doesn't matter what path you choose. You're just going to be randomly moving around, right? So first of all, I'd say, again, what's your why, man? Why are you training, and why do you want to learn this stuff? And then in terms of how you do that, once you've got your purpose, I think normally the best way to approach it is find really good teachers. So find people that have walked that path already and have done really well in it, and find them, and also experiment, explore. And remember that you are your own authority. So a great teacher, Krishnamurti, said, you must be a light unto yourself, and I think that's right. You have to don't accept what someone says just because it's someone saying it to you. Don't accept anything like that just because someone who you think is more experienced than you is telling you. Question it. There's nothing wrong with questioning it. Try it. Practice it. Actually try it. Does this work? As Bruce Lee said, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and then add what is specifically your own. So, Bruce was a wise guy, I think those principles. It's better to follow those principles than to look for techniques or methods. If you've got good principles, you will always find techniques and methods that fit those principles and practice. So start with the why, and then from that why, develop the principles that will allow you to live that why. And the method, the technique, whatever, that will come after.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for sharing that. To wrap up, guys, I really wanted to thank you, Dan, for coming into the show.
Pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And if you could just maybe mention quickly to the audience watching is, what is Parkour Generations? What do you guys stand for? What's your position in this company? As well as, are there any future events that maybe they could potentially come in and see for themselves what is Parkour Generations all about?
Yeah, so I'm one of the founders of Parkour Generations and the director. And what we are about really is helping people reach their potential. We're about helping people become better versions of themselves, and providing a tool and a method of practice by which they can do that. So and a place here, this kind of place where they can come and be part of that community, part of that journey. So our role is to using parkour, our discipline, is to give that to other people and help them really become the best they can be, and gain that self-knowledge through the challenge, the mental and the physical challenge, the adversity in a way that parkour is, and through that, adapting to that adversity, they get better. And for us, that's why we do it. We're trying to help people become more resilient, become stronger, become more creative, more adaptable, more confident. All these things that we know this kind of training brings you. And how we do that is through events, through classes, through workshops, through education, certifications, displays, facilities where people can come and do it. We have loads of events all around the world every year. Big one coming up is in August. We'll be doing the Rendezvous event here in London, which is a big 3-day annual sort of international training weekend where loads of the best parkour coaches and practitioners from all over the world come.
Wow,
and
okay.
Great full-on event training. And in July, of course, we've got the parkour camp in the French Alps, which is a week of very intensive training, and in beautiful surroundings in a great chalet, but really, really tough training and really good movement knowledge for a whole week. So those events for summer coming up are people, if they're interested in movement and interested in stuff, they should definitely look into those.
Absolutely. And guys, if you want to know more what Parkour Generations is about, as well as Dan Edwards in general, I'll put down in the description the link below where you could see what Parkour Generations is, what they stand for, their upcoming events. Even Dan Edwards, he has his own social media accounts. Is that safe to say that it's okay to?
Yeah, yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. He's with the social people now, guys. With that, guys, I'd like to say thank you for watching. If there are any other questions that you'd like to ask me or the athletes themselves, feel free to message me personally. And as always, continue to embrace life and see it as an adventure.